essentially business being affected by COVID-19, the pandemic. So here's some alarming statistics, and in terms of what we're dealing with respect to COVID-19. 72% of small businesses have seen significant drops in sales and revenue. 25% of businesses are making less than half of their normal revenue. 40% of businesses in BC were forced to reduce operations or close entirely. 14% of businesses in operation are considering closing. And this is from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business Statistics. So moving on from some more alarming statistics, 60% of small businesses were forced to seek loans from the Canadian Emergency Business Account. 55% of businesses were forced to seek relief from the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy. And more than twice the normal number of businesses of all sizes due to COVID-19 have closed. So these are very alarming. One of the statistics from the Business Council of British Columbia is there's an expectation that 15% of businesses with paid employees will be closing by late 2021. And when we look at the businesses that are vulnerable, and these are just an example, you've got bars and restaurants, and those, there's other restrictions with respect to those that are ongoing, clinics and salons. Imagine yoga and any fitness studios. You've got medical and therapists and dentists that are very vulnerable in terms of this pandemic. And retail and travel agencies, there's a significant decrease in operations of retail, especially, and travel agencies and other like businesses. And we know that this is a global problem. And in courts around the world, there's a number of cases that are proceeding, a number of cases proceeding by way of class action. There's cases proceeding by way of independent actions. And essentially, when we deal with business interruption insurance, which I'm going to get into in some detail, the policies are very similar. And when we look globally in terms of, for example, Britain, they have interpretation, and their policies are very, very similar. And the policies, a lot of these insurance companies are international. A lot of these, most of the insurance companies that we're going to be dealing with are US based at the very least. So who are we? And we're a law firm that has extensive experience with holding insurance companies to account. And essentially, we have teamed up with other US lawyers, and these are some of the, if not the leading lawyers, Stuve, Siegel, Hansen. We've teamed up to work cross-border with them. Why? One, for strategic and tactical reasons, but other, that we want a voice at the table. And if you want a voice at the table, you have to be with the lawyers that have a bigger voice in the United States. So what is business interruption insurance? And it's a policy of insurance that when you have a business insurance, they basically have insurance for losses. And when you deal with business interruption specifically, they're for unforeseen events, accidents, pandemics, closures due to fires, et cetera. Now, what comes with business insurance? And you can see that essentially, this is right off of an own insurance, trying to explain it: mortgage payments, rent payments, payroll expenses, relocation fees, income expenses, additional advertising costs. So, essentially, when I introduce this, what does it cover when we talk about disasters and events or other perils? Closure of businesses, which is something that we've seen in this pandemic. Reduction of operations. One of the most significant factors that we're all dealing with is reduction of operations, even us as a law firm. Modification of operations, and the modification of operations come with costs. So essentially, if in terms of insurance and business interruption insurance, the issue is, well, what does it cover? And I'm sure most of you are going to have questions, and I pause here because if there is any questions, I'll deal with them at the end if that's convenient for everybody. And if you put your messages in, I will deal with them at the end. So what do they cover? Typically, you've got revenue losses, you have operating expenses, payroll, loss of use of premises. There's factors in that. There's some that have been interpreted for loss of profits, etc. So the question that you are all wondering is, well, how does this apply to me? Are we covered? So one of the things you should do when you go back is there's these policies of your insurance policy. These are very, very large documents. Some of them we've been looking at have been 300 pages. Often when you ask your broker, hey, can I get a copy of my insurance policy? It comes and it's just a front, and there's hardly anything. It's not the meat that you need. So you need the entire policy. And so when you look at that entire policy, and you have to look at what is some phrases that you want to see if it's defined. One, do you have business interruption insurance? Most businesses should have it. Do you have a phrase that talks about business income? Do you have a phrase that refers to all perils coverage? So policies, and when you're looking at the policies, and look for information. I'm just trying to give you sort of a Cole's Note version of how some of these policies are, the wording is so clear that it's for sure you have coverage for virus, or it's almost an event that would be covered. So policies may state all risks of physical loss or damage to the insured property. Well, and that can be subject to interpretation, and I'm going to get to that somewhat later. Language is absolutely key in this, in terms of looking at this. So if you have outbreak, extra coverage, well, it's pretty likely you have pandemic COVID coverage. If you have pandemic outbreak declared by civil authority, even better. So this is just some clear phrases that you'll need to look for. The next issue is, are insurers denying claims from COVID-19? And most of you in the public domain, not in the legal domain, insurers are defend and deny claims. And particularly if there's any issues of clarity, it's all about exposure, and it's all about the saving of costs. They're a business, and if they don't have to pay, they're not going to pay. So there's one of the, deny and defend is something that we as lawyers deal with all the time with insurance companies. And it's not that they're doing anything wrong, it's just that they have the right to deny and defend. Now, another aspect of insurance is basically they look at these claims as an exposure. Everyone who has a business interruption claim, you are categorized as an exposure. So insurance companies are in the business of reducing that exposure. And the reality is that most businesses and people are just not informed. They just really cannot understand that, what does this mean, or how is this interpreted? And, some businesses may not just want the fight, and that's where we come in. So did your insurance company deny your claim? Another aspect of that is, well, did you lose? For example, this is just one example. Did you have a loss of use of your property? That's an insurable claim. Did you have, was there a claim, or is there a phrase in your insurance that talks about there is no physical damage to the property, even though the business lost the use of the property due to government restrictions, is clear in the policy itself? How is that interpreted? The next thing is, you look at these and you say, well, policy should on its face be, it should, speak for itself. And it's unfortunate, but these are legal documents, and they're legal documents that are extraordinarily complicated. So when I say insurance contracts can be up to 200 pages to 300 pages long, these are some of the policies that we've been looking at. And it requires some legal training and sometimes expert evidence, with respect to how do you interpret this. And if they're unclear, insurance companies are going to be the first to deny. And so it's all about accountability. And I come back to what if, and this is something that in terms of education, one of the things is this: we're going to have policies that are clear. There's like 3 categories of policies, and some of these policies will be abundantly clear. And what I mean by abundantly clear is they'll say pandemic, civil authority, the stuff that we've talked about earlier in terms of clear and undeniable that you have this insurance. And then there's going to be, and that's about 35 to 40% of these cases. Then you're going to have about 35 to 40% of the cases that are ambiguous, or how do you, does it say it, or doesn't say it, and it may have it, it may not have it. And there's what's interesting is there's this Latin term, and I need to deal with a Latin term. It's called Contra preferendum. And Contra preferendum stands for the proposition that an ambiguity in a contract, in particular in this scenario, insurance contract, should be interpreted in favor of the insured. That's the law of our Supreme Court of Canada. That's the law around the world, that if there's any ambiguity in the policy, if your policy does not say you don't have pandemic coverage, or it is not as clear, you still may have coverage. And that's kind of the interesting aspect of these cases. So contra preferendum and ambiguity, to give again you some comfort, the way it's interpreted by the courts is it's interpreted against the party who drafted the contract. Well, in this case, who drafted the contract? It's the insurance companies. And so our Supreme Court of Canada says when there's an insurance policy and it's unclear, contra preferendum should apply against the insurer. So you'll see here, this is one of the interesting cases that came out of our Supreme Court of Canada, Progressive Homes Limited versus Lombard Insurance. It's a 2010, but it's really, it has nothing to do with COVID, but it has everything to do with how you interpret these insurance policies. And so if you look at where the language of the insurance policy is ambiguous, the courts rely on the general rules of contract construction. So paragraph 24, when these rules of construction fail to resolve ambiguity, courts will construe the policy contra preferendum against the insurer. One corollary of the contra preferendum rule is that coverage provisions are interpreted broadly and exclusion clauses narrowly. So this is to give you some comfort, because unfortunately, it's hard for you to look at the policies and say, well, where is it, is there ambiguity here? Does it fall clear? Is it in the sort of general framework? And the courts, if you have that type of policy, which is filled with ambiguity, you can rely on the fact that there is law that will protect you. So there's 3 decisions of the court that have been interpreted. And one of them, there was a debate about what is physical damage and resulting physical damage, and how does a pandemic affect physical damage? Does physical damage have to be a fire? Does physical damage have to be a break-in? Does physical damage have to be physical damage? And the Ontario Court of Appeal, and this was with respect to a business interruption policy, stated loss of use of the property is physical damage. So when you have that kind of statement, you can rest assured that you have coverage. And even though that physical damage may be on its face an interpretation of it, it's clear and there's no ambiguity with it, it's not that simple. And that's how far the courts will go. The U.S. court, right? There's class actions that are proceeding, and a lot of insurance companies are trying to get these class actions basically dismissed, and the courts are not having it. A British court considered 21 sample wordings with respect to a number of insurers just recently, and found that there was insured risk in many of the policies. So the question is, are you covered? And coming back to that question, all businesses have essentially insurance. The question is, do they have business interruption insurance? And then specifically, will it apply here? And one of the issues is, has your broker also discussed business interruption insurance with you? Now, I say this because, we're really going after the insurance companies, or the target should be the insurance companies. It ought not to be the broker. But a broker has what's called a fiduciary duty. And a fiduciary duty is a special duty of loyalty that basically, as a professional, they need to guide you. When you come to deal with an insurance broker, they have to guide you to make sure that you have the right insurance. And when I gave you an example earlier on in the seminar about essentially the type of businesses, you might want to think back and think, did the insurance broker talk to me about this? Am I a retail business? Am I a business that has to deal with the public? Almost every business has to deal with the public, but a restaurant, a bar, a retail outlet, imagine a dentist. I just give you those as examples. So when you look at a policy and then you see the picture of a policy and you have the designation of types of insurance, the picture, and your broker goes through your policy with you and talks to you about these policies or the areas of insurance that you should seek to have covered. We look at floods, we look at earthquake, for example, fire, theft. Those are easy. But with respect to, has there been a pandemic? Is this something that is on the radar of insurance companies? It might not be on the radar of the public until this happened, but it clearly is, and it's clearly talked about, and it's clearly an understandable area of insurability that the insurance companies need to deal with, and that brokers are trained in. So this is where, with respect to when you look at business insurance, look for all perils, civil authority, pandemic. These are words that you may look at when you're in your insurance policy. So lastly, why am I here? Why are we having this conversation? And one of them is, this is really, the business interruption insurance is really a call for justice. And when I say that, there is certainly self-interest from lawyers and the legal community. But at the end of the day, this is a real access to justice. And unless the public is educated in this and really has an appreciation and understanding as to they have rights and they have a voice and they need to be heard, and with respect to their businesses, a lot of businesses are small businesses or medium-sized businesses that are hurting, and they have the relative insurance to protect them. And we're here, that's our job, to say, hey, how can we make a difference? How can we help? And really, at the end of the day, how can we make the insurance company accountable? And so with respect to the litigation, we can talk about what that means. We're trying to derive a number of class actions and moving forward with class actions. And class actions are basically, if we file an action, you can join the class. A lot of these class actions may or may not lead to a resolution for you or your business, because your losses are independent. And we as a law firm are looking at both. We're looking at class action lawsuits, and we're looking at helping the community and anybody in the community that has a policy of insurance. So one of the things that we're also looking at, you might want to, we need policies. And obviously, when I went back to tell you, hey, look at some of these policies are 200 to 300 pages, some of them are 100 pages, some of them are 50 pages. We need to have time to interpret it. And so if any of you in that audience is saying, hey, I might have business insurance, or I do have business insurance, and I wonder, well, how do I get to that next step? And the next step is contact us and give us your policy, give us the full policy, and we can take these policies by email. And within 3 to 4 days, without basically, there's no obligation to you, no cost, we'll tell you whether you're in the clear category whether you're in ambiguity or ambiguous category, or whether in fact you don't have coverage at all, because some of you may not, but the majority of you should. So that's the presentation, and I'm going to be open for questions, and I'll look for questions that have been put out. And you can still put questions while we're talking. So, okay, one of the questions that came up is when I've talked about, I think I've answered it actually. If you give us your policy, your entire policy, how long would that take? And I say 3 to 4 days, maybe a week, for us to get back. And the answer is why? Well, one, we work with the insurance, lawyers out of the Stuve law firm, and they have a whole basically a class action group that's dealing with business interruption, and they have specific lawyers that actually are interpreting these policies. And because these policies are Canadian and American, it's almost the same language, the same insurance company, and the same application. So we're sending the policies there. We're also, we have independent adjusters here, which we're relying on for interpretation aspects. And then we are relying on Stuve to advise us with respect to where that policy fits. Now, one question, and I addressed it in the seminar, was, does it cost anything? And again, for us to give you an opinion with respect to your policy, that is not going to cost you anything. With respect to acting for you, once we give you an opinion, then you would then advise us, or we would like to act for you or become your lawyers. Some of you will have specific, and one question is, essentially, is there a value to these claims? Well, some of these insurance companies, and it's a very good question, is that some of these insurance companies actually set out exact number of what do you have? I've seen some businesses have $25 million. I've had others that have had, with respect to $100,000, if it's business loss or if it's loss of use, or some have restrictions, some don't, some have, most have a number. And a lot of these numbers, when we talk about the effect on the business and the actual losses, that's what the insurance covers. One of the question is, how many companies in BC have successful claims? And it's really too early to answer whether they're going to be successful claims or not successful claims, because it comes back to the interpretation. And I can assure you that the way the courts have been proceeding, the way that these insurance contracts have been looked at for hundreds of years in terms of, and contracts generally, there's a legal application here, and the claims, a majority of the claims are going to be successful. Question rises, was my business, if it's shut down, can I still file a claim? Again, a very good question. And essentially the insurance applies at the time. So if you're insured and your business has gone under, or your business is about to go under, or it is, the fact that your business went under or going to under, et cetera, that is not of any consequence. The question is, did you have insurance at the time? You're covered. One of the things that we're running up against, and the question is asked, I had somebody already look at it, and at my policy. I've asked my broker, I've asked my business lawyer, and they basically advised me that there is no coverage. Now, this is where, I've talked about how nuanced and how complicated to really look at these policies and give you an answer of consequence, setting out a legal basis for the claim. Brokers, and we've seen, and we've experienced it, particularly with talking to our U.S. counterparts, that the majority of these claims are being denied, and a lot of them with our brokers, it's a sure denial. And I'm not suggesting that that's happening here or it can, but that's why it's taken us 3 to 4 days to figure out what is the real application here. This is not, hey, I look at one sheet of the 200 or 300 page contract of insurance and I can tell you exactly what the loss is or whether you have it and whether you're covered. So my insurance policy doesn't mention pandemic at all. Is there still a chance I could get compensation? Well, that's an interesting, all perils, for example, what I referred to, the aspect of business loss or loss of use of property or physical loss has been interpreted to include business interruption, which means that you do have coverage. You've been interrupted by COVID, by the pandemic. Does interruption insurance or interruption of service apply? Very good question. And yes, it does. That's exactly, with respect to service is your ability to actually run your business. It could also be interpreted by how many people you have in your business. It also could be interpreted by your ability to have customers come in or customers not visiting your premises. So that can be interpreted very widely. So one question that came up is, in your estimation, do our members require clauses specific to business interruption, or can this be less specific? Yes, again, very good question. It's about what does it cause? So what does it say in the insurance company document? Does it say all perils? Does it mention specifically business interruption? Does it mention physical damage to the property? If it doesn't, essentially, the question, if I break it down, require clauses specific to business interruption, maybe not, but that's not definitive. What it is definitive is, do you have a business loss? Did you have a loss of use of your property? And it comes back to this fancy Latin term that's used, that courts always use, of contra preferendum. If you're going to read a policy and there's ambiguity, it doesn't actually say that, but it does not say that, then that policy is read against the insurer. And there's going to be a number of these cases that are going to be paid because it's not excluded. And by the fact that it's not excluded, it's inclusive, it's included. So this interruption by civil authority, 72-hour deductible, is this a clause that would apply? Again, that'd be a very specific interruption by civil authority, 72-hour deductible. I really can't answer that. I can tell you that a civil authority and the shutdown and the way that whether there's a 72-hour deductible, well, 72 hours in your business, this pandemic has gone on for 6 months. It looks like it's going on for another 6 months in terms of the consequences. So I don't know if that's a full answer, but I can certainly say the deductibles are usually clear and they're usually very modest, in like $1,000 or something like that. Are insurers likely to change policy wording going forward? Great question, because the answer is probably yes. Yeah, but at the same time, the answer is going to be we need to restore a business, so we have to sell insurance for a business for the purposes of earthquake. We know there's going to be lots of earthquakes. There's going to be fires. There's going to be, so it's a risk aspect. And yes, you're going to see insurance companies popping up that are actually going to be selling COVID or pandemic insurance. And it'll probably be something that all businesses are going to say, hey, look we should actually buy this. This is something that we need. In the same way we need earthquakes, in the same way we need fire, and the same way we need all perils. That is something that I think is going to be standard. So I think if I haven't answered this, my business is already shut down, can I still file a claim? That answer is absolutely yes. And again, because the insurance is this, when you deal with insurance companies, did you have insurance at the time? and the fact of the event. I'll give you by way of an example. If you had a fire and your house is burnt down, you have insurance. And so your house is burnt down, and in the same way as a pandemic. That's why you have insurance, and you have insurance for the year or the time period that you have. It is for that entire time period. So as I understand it, all the questions have been addressed, and we're just going to now unmute and the dialed users for a few minutes. If they have any questions, please. Okay. So is there any questions?
Hi, Anthony. Arnold here from the Chamber. Just one quick question, just regarding, so if you seem to have business interruption insurance, I guess the first step is to first talk to your insurance agent and make the claim. And then at that point, is it at that point we should contact you, or do you advise, like, if you think you're in this place, to talk to you first? What would you recommend?
Well, a very good question. You can always talk to your broker, and your broker has a fiduciary duty of loyalty. So they need to advise you. And so, always the first step is ask your broker. What do you want to go to? You don't need a lawyer to advise you if your broker is going to properly advise you. The problem with this is when you're asking a broker, hey, do I have coverage? Does that broker, even though they have fiduciary duty, do they understand the legal implications? Do they really appreciate what we talk about with the ambiguity and the Contra preferendum and all the other aspects of how this is being interpreted? It's in your interest to get your broker to look at it, give you an answer, and then you bring it to us. And remember, if you bring it to us, and we not only have a confidential duty to you, we keep everything confidential, but we're providing you with a full legal opinion about what we think your policy is really saying for free. There's no charge for doing that. Then you are in a position where you can decide, hey, are we a good fit for you, and would you like us to act? That's simply what we're trying to achieve here today.
Hi, Anthony. It's
Hello.
Robin.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah. So I know I have interruption insurance because I remember specifically getting it a few years ago for my business. And as soon as the pandemic happened on March, let's see what day it was. On March 16th, actually the day that we had to shut down, I wrote my insurance agent, and it took him several days to get back to me, almost a week. And this is what he wrote, and I'm very disappointed in what he wrote. He writes, sorry for the delay. Yes, it's been a hectic week with everything that's been going on, but I did ask the insurance company for clarification on any coverage for, in quotes, pandemics, but I haven't heard back yet. I will follow up with them again first thing Monday, and if I come across anything in the meantime, I will let you know. However, please keep in mind most insurance companies do not cover losses pertaining to things like pandemics, but I couldn't find anything specific in the policy wordings, so I am checking with them to be sure. Well, he never did get back to me, and he quit a few days later.
Well, that's unfortunate, right? Yeah. Well, here's part of the problem. Remember, when we talk about brokers usually have relationships with the insurance companies, and the relationships are meaningful. I mean, notwithstanding, they owe you a fiduciary duty. Fiduciary duty is a fancy term in law, and what it simply means is they owe a duty of absolute loyalty. In other words, your interests have to come before the insurance company. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's the legal sort of, that's how you embrace it legally. But what does that really mean? In a common sense point of view, what it means is this, that broker needs to do everything in their power to investigate and provide you with an opinion and a full valid opinion. And if the insurance company says no, so their first, well, I'll just ask the insurance company. Well, the insurance company is not the one you need to ask.
No, I realize that.
And that broker should actually say, well, there's a conflict here. This is something that If I can't resolve it, the last person I want, or last company I want to ask is the insurance company, because the insurance company is, as we say, insurance companies are not going to roll over on this stuff. And if it's ambiguous, or it doesn't say it or whatever, they're just going to deny. Now, I'm not suggesting that the insurance companies are bad, or this is just the way the world works. and with insurance companies, once they're told, look, at this policy will be interpreted this, or be interpreted this way, interpreted this way. The reason I snapshotted you some cases is so you kind of understand that the way this is going right now is that the courts are being they're reading these contracts in the favor of insured people like yourself in your businesses. Mm-hmm. So there's been some decision in the United States not so favorable, but in Canada and in most of the US states, these contracts, which are the same contracts, are being read particularly for insureds. You're an insured, right? So there is some ambiguity, and there's a reason why these are so technical, etc. But I wanted to provide you with sort of comfort that there's going to be a robust appreciation and understanding that that insurance, particularly business interruption insurance, is going to be read very liberally by our courts. And that's going to make decisions, and these decisions like physical damage or perils or, shutdowns, that the insurance companies will now say, okay, now we have to pay. And then it becomes, okay, what is your claim worth? All right. So we're not there fully yet, but we're almost there. There'll be decisions, and there'll be some that'll resolve. There's some class actions that are ongoing. Some class actions you join may not take your individual actions. So what I'm saying today to you is that these are not just ongoing claims, they're really independent claims, because it's your business, it's your losses, and it's your insurance policy. Notwithstanding, a lot of these insurance policies read the same. Sorry about the long-winded answer.
No, that's okay. That's okay. No, I thank you. So I'm just disappointed that, he never did get back to me, and I get an email about 2 months later with a new insurance agent saying that he had quit.
So Robin, what I would suggest is, send us your policy.
I'm going to.
And ask that insurance agent, hey, can you send me my entire policy?
That's what I'm just going to do.
And then you'll send it to us, and we'll look at it, and we'll get back to you and tell you what it says. Do you have a claim?
I'm the one that changed mine in July because of the fact that I had to permanently shut my business. So is it possible that I can only, if there is a possibility of reclaiming some income from business interruption, it would only go until I changed my policy in July?
No, because your policy that you changed is the policy moving forward, but you're insured for what your losses are, and your losses can sometimes go into the future. So, you read if the policy is that clear, well, this ends your losses as of such and such a date.
Right.
Insurance doesn't work that way. So I'll give you an example. You got a car accident, you have insurance, your car's totaled, you don't have insurance anymore, you've canceled your insurance. Do you still have insurance for the injuries from the car accident, or you've injured somebody, or the protect?
Yeah.
Yes, you have full. Doesn't matter that you don't have the insurance policy anymore.
Right.
Is the insurance policy active and legally binding at the time? And the answer is yes, of course.
Okay. You're recording this. Are we able, the participants today, are we able to get a recording of this?
Yes, I think you are. I got a thumbs up from somebody in the room. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Just because I missed the first few minutes.
No worries.
Very informative. Thank you, Anthony.
Well, thank you so much. And there is one other question that popped up. And what if the broker did not send you the entire policy when you renewed? Do they have a duty to do so? The answer is absolutely. It's your policy, and they have a duty to inform you. They have this duty of loyalty and fiduciary duty. Simply, your interests are paramount. Their job is to protect you against the insurance company. And their job is also to fight for you if you have, and they should be educated in this stuff. And this is where some conflicts happen, where insurance companies and brokers have relationships that affect judgment and may affect ultimately their ability to assist. But the overriding duty of loyalty is one where it's a legal it's a legal duty, and it's a paramount duty. So thank you, everybody. I'm told I need to wrap up, and yes, it's recorded. And I want to thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to have this discussion with you and make sure that you understand that really this is an access to justice issue, and it's a global issue. It's all around the world. So thank you so much.
Thank you.